Can the teacher beat the student? The way this is going, man, that is a very, very, very tough ask. Let's talk about it right here on Cowboys Spit.
Here we go! Yeah, here we go! Wait, take
Cowboys Spit.
Throws back of the end zone. There's
What's going on, everybody? Cowboys C3 here. Back again. We got another week. Cowboys travel east to take on the 5-3 Atlanta Falcons, who've won 4 of their last 5 games and put up 30 points in their last 3 or 4 games. Tough ask. This week, you had the Trayvon Diggs blow up. Wasn't really a blow up, man. He just came out and asked the dude, like, is that all you got from a play? Mike Leslie here, local news reporter, local sports reporter on ABC. He put a video up of Trayvon Diggs on a play where, he singled him out. And there's a play where George Kittle caught a ball coming across the middle on coming from right to left. Caught a ball. Donovan Wilson was the one that was actually in coverage. We'll get on that whole Donovan Wilson thing here in a minute. Donovan Wilson caught a ball. George Kittle caught a pass coming across the middle. Donovan Wilson was missing on coverage, and Trayvon Diggs was actually covering another receiver. And he turned around, and you could tell as George Kittle was going up the left sideline, you could tell that Trayvon Diggs was kind of analyzing the play, like how he was going to attack this, because George Kittle is known he's just a strong dude, man. He'll stiff arm you and embarrass you. Trayvon Diggs is trying to figure out, how am I going to attack this situation? But the whole time George Kittle is gaining yards, and he ended up engaging him probably like 10, 12 yards down the field after all this happened and pushed him out of bounds. It's a gain of about 30 yards. Got the 49ers, in a first and goal situation. And Mike Leslie clipped the play and went on his X feed and was like, what is Trayvon Diggs doing here? Fast forward into the game, Trayvon Diggs goes into the locker room. About 2 minutes later, he comes out of the locker room and goes straight at Mike Leslie and asks him, is that all you got from this play? And he told him, like, you don't do what I do, which, is true, right? It's very true. Mike Leslie doesn't do what he does. And he told him to stay in his lane. Mike Leslie didn't back down, though. He asked him, he said, so are you going to answer the question or what? You know what I mean? I asked the question on my page. You going to answer the question or what? And he said, you don't do what I do. You need to stay in your lane, buddy, is what he said. He called him buddy. That's crazy. Then he went to say something about, we can talk about it right now if you want to. Like, I got a microphone and a camera right here. We can talk about this right now. Trayvon Diggs told him we can talk about these nuts and walked back. He hit him with the D's nuts, man. And it's frustration. It is. He felt like he got singled out. And he explained it. He went on Micah Parsons' podcast. And he explained it. He has a kind of a strange take. He said that the media, especially the local media, and the players should be allies, and the local media should protect them. And there's been several cases where the local media has protected players. Last year during training camp, Trayvon Diggs and Dak Prescott were going back and forth. And Trayvon Diggs was talking crazy to Dak Prescott. And it came out in the national media that, the team doesn't respect Dak Prescott. And the local media reporters came back and was like, nah, man, that's just how they practice. That's just how they talk to each other. And it was like a competitive nature type of thing. And so local media does protect the local athlete, in some cases. But media personnel is there to ask you questions. That's what they're there to do. And they're there to ask tough questions, and tough questions are going to happen. And we saw a couple weeks ago when Jerry had his blow up. Well, they asked Jerry about this situation. Stephen Jones said he didn't know anything about it. Mike McCarthy took the coach's route. He said, this is stuff that we have to avoid. We talk about taking the high road here all the time, and he definitely didn't do that in this situation. Jerry came back and said, well, yeah, he's upset, and I don't really blame him. But Jerry kind of had to answer like that because he did the exact same thing the week before that. Mike McCarthy said it, tried to sweep it under the rug. This was a thing that happened. Yeah, it happened. Players have emotions. They check their social media a lot, especially this age of player. We shouldn't do that type of thing. We'll talk to him. Won't happen again and carry on. Well, Micah Parsons and Trayvon Diggs did a podcast about it the same night. And, Trayvon Diggs was just like, look, like local media is supposed to protect me. You know what I'm saying? We're supposed to protect each other, kind of look out for each other. And that's kind of a weird take, but I understand where he's coming from. Like don't try to single me out on a play where I wasn't the man assigned to the guy that caught the ball. I'm literally coming over trying to help the dude out that caught the pass. So, that happens. And then come to practice today, he does address the media, and he talked about it, and he apologized a little bit better today. He was like, I apologize. I was a little bit upset, but he didn't practice today. Said he had a sore calf, probably just a rest day. Big news coming out of campus that Deron Bland was activated to the 53-man roster. His 21 days of practice after injury reserve is up. Had to do something, so they activated him. He did not practice today. Probably won't practice till my guess is probably tomorrow and Friday. Weather's supposed to be bad here in the city, but I'm pretty sure they got a hell of a facility to practice indoors. And they're playing indoors anyway, so they'll probably practice indoors. He's back on the roster. Micah Parsons did not practice today either, but he's expected to be back on the roster as well. So we'll get a, bigger name defense this week against the the hot Atlanta Falcons. Like I said, 5-3, won for their last 5, 30 points in the last 3 or 4 games. Cowboys coming into the game at 3-4. We got 15th ranked offense and 31 ranked defense, giving up 28.3 points per game. Not looking good. Here's some interesting stats about the Cowboys. Cowboys are 32 in red zone defense, 32nd in red zone defense, so last in the league in red zone defense. Another thing that's a little alarming, and we'll talk about this more in depth later on, just later on in this podcast, but we'll talk about it, probably more in depth on Saturday. Give you some rushing stats for the Cowboys, and we'll go switch over to the offense. Cowboys yards per game, they're 32nd in NFL at 74.1 yards per game. Yards per carry, they're 32nd in NFL with 3.4 yards per carry. Yards before contact, they're 27th in the league at 0.93 yards before first contact. Yards after first contact, they're 32nd in the league at 2.51 yards after contact. Explosive runs, 32nd in the league with 10 explosive runs. Explosive runs are 10 or more. Longest Cowboy run this season is Rico Dowdell with a 15-yard run. So everything that they've run explosively has been 10 to 11, between 10 and 15 yards. Cowboys are third in the NFL in light boxes, which means 6 or more defensive people inside the box. And they are third in the league. 55.3% of the time the Cowboys face a light box. So to have these running stats with a light box tells you a lot about the Cowboy running room. Unfortunate. All right. Offensive stats for the Atlanta Falcons. Kirk Cousins passing at 68.3% for 2,106 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. Bijan Robinson is coming in with 116 carries for 546 yards, 4.7 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns. Tyler Algier is 68 attempts for 352 yards, 5.2 yards per attempt with 1 touchdown. Drake London leads receivers with 48 receptions for 525 yards and 5 touchdowns. Darnell Mooney has 36 catches for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. Bijan Robinson is third with 31 receptions for 244 yards and one touchdown. And Kyle Pitts is right behind him at 29 catches for 419 yards and 3 touchdowns. Defensively, Kay Nellis leads the way with 65 total tackles. This is where it gets interesting about the Saints. About the Falcons. I'm sorry. I'm thinking about the NFC South is the Falcons this week. I wish it was the Saints. I want that get back now. Jesse Bates, strong safety, has 50 total tackles. Cornerbacks, the nickel corner, offered 45 tackles, and cornerback Mike Hughes with 44 tackles. So their corners and their safeties make a lot of tackles. So I was a little interested in that. So I started doing a little bit of research, and I noticed that their corner set is well. They don't allow you to run outside. They want you to run in the middle and try to get in that teeth of the defense in there with Caden Ellis and Matthew Judon is the strong side linebacker for this team. They're pretty decent on defense. They're not the greatest. They got the 19th ranked defense in the NFL. They are not particularly. They don't play particularly well in the secondary. They give up some big plays, but they are opportunistic and they do create interceptions, which doesn't bode well for the Cowboys, not these days. I listened to Dan Orlovsky today, and I'm not a big Dan Orlovsky fan. I don't like him. I don't think he's a very good sports analyst. He's got some pretty biased views if you want to go that route, but I think that's kind of an ESPN thing, with the Cowboys in general. He said some interesting things today about the Cowboy offense. He said that there is not a quarterback in the NFL that he can think of in recent history that is set up to fail like the Cowboys quarterback. And you look at it and, let's be honest. He hasn't helped himself. That's for sure, right? He hasn't helped himself. He's been pretty knuckleheaded in these first, 8-9 weeks of the season. He's done some pretty interesting things. I was talking to some more people and and just kind of like looking over just films and clips of things that are going on. And you can tell when Dak is about to throw an interception. You can tell if Dak is dancing his feet and he kind of clutches once and then he throws the ball, it's going to be a pick. Go back and look at it. If he's flushed out of the pocket, or his feet are not set well, and he kind of throws just with all arm, it's going to be a pick. Like, it's going to be a pick. And that can come from a number of things. Bad route combinations. Heard that, numerous times. Dan Orlovsky as well, talking about how play calling for the Cowboys has been atrocious. Just to give you an example, Dalvin Cook, Before Sunday's game against the 49ers, Mike McCarthy came out and said Dalvin Cook was an excellent, off-tackle runner, outside zone type of runner. That's what his forte is. He comes into the game and on 6 carries and runs 1 outside zone. Everything else was up the middle. Like, you just told us that's what he's good at. That's his forte, and then you run him straight up the middle. It's the same route combinations, and we've talked about this on previous shows, and I'm not going to beat a dead horse. It's the same route combinations that we've had with this team for the last 8-9 years. Nothing has really changed. Before Mike McCarthy was here, and then after Mike McCarthy has been here, it's been the same route combinations. It's kind of hard to figure out because Brian Schottenheimer, the offensive coordinator, when he was in Jacksonville, Jacksonville's offense didn't look like this. It didn't. McCarthy is calling plays that he's comfortable with, right? He's calling plays that he's familiar with. He's calling plays where he knows where everybody should be. And the offense is not particularly well. In order to run an offense like that, you're going to have weapons that are complementary to the quarterback. And right now you have one wide receiver. You have a pretty decent tight end. He's pretty good. But a lot of times him and CeeDee Lamb are on the same side, and they're kind of in the same place, and they don't get an opportunity to like separate and do some things individually inside of the offense. A lot of times they're in the same vicinity of each other. And it's just kind of weird how that happens. We don't run the ball particularly well. We don't throw the ball particularly well. We do have it's the 17th ranked offense in the NFL, and it's all off passing yards. It's nothing off rushing yards. We are dead last in the NFL in running football. you come into a game where against an Atlanta defense they can be pretty mediocre. They gave up a lot of yards to Baker Mayfield. I think Baker Mayfield threw for 344 yards. He threw 4 touchdowns, but he threw 2 picks, and he threw 2 costly picks on top of that. So they're very opportunistic on that point of view. Then you flip to the offensive side of the ball, and you have the teacher versus the student. Mike Zimmer was Kirk Cousins' coach in Minnesota. He knows what Kirk Cousins does well. Kirk Cousins knows what his defense doesn't do well, and they are going to go at each other, and it should be pretty interesting if the Cowboys cannot do things like this. If you look at this picture, this is Brock Purdy's view of a play. It's a 3rd down play. And if you look at this play, it looks like a basic cover 2, right? Outside linebackers have hook the curls. Middle linebacker has, anywhere in the middle. You got your corners playing back to, it looks like they're playing back 8 to 10 yards, and then you got your 2 deep safeties. Well, your 1 deep safety is stepped up. His eyes are on the slot receiver. For the life of me, I cannot understand why there are 3 linebackers standing right directly in the middle of the field. Well, Brock Purdy, all he did when this play continued is he let this right corner drift back to this corner route, and this slot and this guy over here in the flats over here in the right was just wide open. There's no hook to curl. There's no nothing. This is a total miscommunication. It has to be. It should not be this easy to dissect. It can't be this easy to dissect. And the Cowboys have been playing defense like this over and over and over and over again all season long. And that's the scheme, right? That is what the scheme is. Larry, you're absolutely right. You can't throw out routes. You can't throw deep routes to your 5'7" receiver. Trust me, he's fast, and I have been calling for them to throw seam routes to Kevontae Turpin. I want him to take the top off the defense right up the middle, make those safeties close in, and give your outside receivers a chance to work one-on-one with nothing over their head. If you line him up outside, that safety is going to fly outside, and that deep route is going to be there. Now, in the game against San Francisco, it worked. He had single coverage on the left side. Dak drops a great pass into him, hits him in both of his hands, but it just also hit off his face mask. So Judon will eat if the Cowboys don't stay balanced. You're absolutely right. And we'll talk about that more on Saturday, but they're going to have to find a running game against Atlanta, because what they are going to have to do is keep that offense on the sideline. That's the only way you can beat them, because this offense is hot. San Francisco's offense was, let's just be honest, they were depleted. They had 1 wide receiver. You had a rookie that just got shot in the preseason playing the other wide receiver, and then you had a slot guy. They were just running multiple people in the slot, and then Kittle was out there, of course, but instead of using Christian McCaffrey, they were just using Juszczyk, and it worked. Brock Purdy wasn't fantastic at all. As a matter of fact, he was pretty bad, but he opened up everything because he was just running the ball. There's another conversation that happened with Jerry this week about Dak not running the ball. And he basically said, Dak's not going to run the ball because we asked him not to, because we don't want to get him hurt. Shit, man, maybe we should just play Trey Lance. I don't know. I'm just saying. Something's got to give. There's something that's off with this team, and I think it starts at the top. I do. But it kind of trickles its way down, and it definitely is within the coaching staff. They can't get this team up to play a game. They can't do it. If you can't get up to play San Francisco, who's whooped your ass in 3 straight years, now 4 straight years, if you can't get up for that game on Sunday night on prime time after a bye week, I don't know what to tell you. You cannot come out and lay eggs like that. You can't do that. 3rd quarter was atrocious, and you couldn't make up for it in the 4th quarter. Dak Prescott is a better quarterback when he's in a hurry-up offense and he's calling his own plays. He just is. In the 4th quarter, the last drive of the game, when you had an opportunity to go down and tie the game, potentially win it with an extra point, which got, the great, best kick in the NFL right now. I don't understand how the play calling in that situation is so bad. I don't understand it, and I never will understand it, because if it's me, I'm taking my play sheet, and every time I have a positive play or a play that works, I'm going to put a red dot by it. anything that worked inside of that in the game, and I look back on it and it's got a red dot on it, I'm running that play because it worked before. You ever notice how the Cowboys offense, they'll run a play and it'll work really well and they'll never come back to that play? Don't know why. I don't know why. Just can't blame anybody but the head coach. Can't blame the offensive coordinator. The offensive coordinator is not calling the plays. The head coach is one with the play sheet. He's the one that's calling the plays. You have to blame him. Defensively, they've just been bad, and it all starts off on the defensive line. Defensive line is terrible. They can't stop the run. They don't get any penetration. They end up in the linebackers' laps because they're getting driven down the field. Mozzie Smith again against San Francisco was terrible. Terrible. Linebackers don't really get a chance to eat because they are too busy fighting off a defensive lineman and some offensive lineman that's got the defensive lineman driving him back into their lap. That's how that happens. Donovan Wilson is horrible in coverage. Said that before. I think I said it at the beginning of the season. I don't suspect that he'll play very much in this next game. I think Wanye Thomas will probably get the start, and I think it's warranted. He's just not very good in coverage. He had a hard time against George Kittle. Had a hard time. This week is Kyle Pitts. He's like a mixture between a wide receiver and a running back. Wide receiver and a tight end. And he looks like a running back when he gets the ball in his hands. He is a very, very, very athletic tight end that is very strong, runs pretty decent routes, and they love to run him on seams and corners in this offense. And getting Donovan Wilson stretched out in games like this is not going to bode well. The 49ers had a really, really, really good game plan, and their game plan predicated on George Kittle attacking Donovan Wilson because they knew he wasn't very good in coverage. And it worked. And he hasn't been very good against the run this year either. I don't know what's going on with it, but that's what we got. So I figured that Wanye Thomas will probably get the start at safety, and I figured he might do pretty well. Drake London, Darnell Mooney, their two outside receivers have had good years. They both got to go around the same amount of yards. Darnell Mooney just got less catches. He's a speed guy. He's fast. He's very fast. If Bland plays, I'm hoping he can run with him. That foot, it's been bothering him for a while. We're going late into this. Well, we're going about the midway mark into the season, and he hasn't even played yet. And obviously that foot has been giving him some trouble, and you come out and your main coverage is going to be against a guy like Darnell Mooney, and that's a tough task. Small guy, super quick. They run him on corners and posts. That's how they like to do it, and they don't mind. Kurt don't mind putting the ball down the field, and a lot of times he's open. They scheme up really well. Drake London, big guy, likes to get physical. Not extremely fast, but fast enough, and it should be a good matchup for Trayvon Diggs. It should be. I'm about to get to that right now, Larry. It should be a good matchup. It should be. These guys throw the ball extremely well. How do they set up this passing game with these two running backs? These two running backs are super duper athletic. Bijan Robinson is the next big running back in the NFL. I'll just say it now. I think he is. I think he's tremendous. University of Texas guy, runs extremely hard, very, very elusive, and he is excellent catching the ball out of the backfield. And then when he goes and sits down, Tyler Algier was a running back before he was a 1,000-yard running back before Bijan even got there. So they have a 1-2 punch of running back that is pretty much on par with the Lions. It's close. It's very close. They don't have the big power back like Montgomery in Atlanta. In Detroit. David Montgomery is he's a power runner, but he's fast too. He runs with a lot of power. Bijan can do both. He can run with power. He can run with elusiveness. He can do a whole lot of things. Tyler Algier is just a firecracker. He's going to hit the hole at full speed, and you better put your hands on him or he's gone. That's what it is. And we haven't stopped the run well this year, though. It's going to be a humongous challenge to slow down this offense. With these backs running the football and play action coming and Kirk Cousins being, a 68% passer for the season, these guys on offense, they're dangerous. They are dangerous. They got a pretty decent offensive line. They're not the greatest in the world, but they're not the worst. Kirk Cousins, if he can get pressure, if you can get some pressure on Kirk Cousins, he will put the ball down the middle of the field, and that's where he's had his most trouble is when he passes the ball in the middle of the field. Everything that they're going to do is going to be outside the hashes or down the field, and that's what they like to do, and they got the guys to do it. They got a big tight end, they got a big wide receiver, and they got a little fast guy that likes to get upfield. That's what they do. And then once they blow your secondary and have them all playing back in coverage, they'll dump the ball to one of these running backs, and then it's off to the races because these boys are hard to tackle once they get into that secondary. Very hard. The teacher is going to have a hard time beating this student. And I think the easiest way is to keep him on the sideline. We'll talk about that more with keys to victory. And when we also have we'll have Zoe on the show on Saturday. He's got an Atlanta Falcons podcast, very good podcast. He's a big time Falcons fan. And he's going to break it down how he sees that the Falcons can beat the Cowboys. It should be a lot of fun. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm kind of worried about this one. I'm not going to lie to you. I was worried about this one when the season first started. When you just looked at the Falcons on paper in the preseason, you're like, man, that's a really good roster. And then they came out in that first game and kind of laid an egg. And you're like, dang. But Kirk Cousins, that Achilles is loosened up, and he's starting to do some pretty tremendous things. And, they look good, especially offensively. Defensively, he could definitely use some work. Judon is excellent. He can do a lot of different things. He's excellent. He can go in the flats. He can come on blitzes. He can come from the outside. They do a lot of different things. They have a lot of players that do pretty well on defense. As a unit, they haven't been fantastic, but they haven't been bad either. Not at all. Cowboys offensively have sputtered. They can't run the ball very well. And on defense, they haven't been good. Let's just be honest about it. They haven't been very good. They've had some good games. They played Pittsburgh pretty good, but that's about it. This is not Pittsburgh. This is not that type of team. Keys to victory on Saturday. We'll talk about that. I think there's a way that the Cowboys can win the game. This is just not an unwinnable game. This is why you play the games. You come into these situations where it looks like you're outgunned, and then you come out and you have a masterful game plan. Hopefully that happens on Saturday. On Sunday, and you come out and you execute that game plan and you win the football game. That's why the games are played on Sundays. But it's going to be tough. This one's not going to be very easy at all. But we can. This is a winnable game. I think it is. I'm not saying that on my prediction that I pick him to win the game. I'm just saying it's a winnable game. As long as you have the game plan, you're gonna have to establish some sort of running game. You're gonna have to do something. You're gonna have to give Terrence Steele some help on the right side. You're gonna have to keep Hunter Lemke in and help him give Dak a little bit of time, try to find some of these receivers or a tight end. And, CeeDee Lamb's going to have an opportunity to have a big game, another big game. And if CD has a big game, the offense is moving pretty good, we'll put some points up. This time we can't put points up in the fourth quarter and just lay eggs, in the third. Had a very, very good game plan, pretty much executed that game plan in the first half against the 49ers. You could have had more points. You just didn't, but that's okay, right? You still had the lead going into halftime. You have to understand that these teams, they're going to make adjustments at halftime and they're going to come at your head, right? You're going to get the best that the Atlanta Falcons have. I guarantee you that. You're going to get the best that they have. They're 2-point favorites and they feel like they can win by 20. That's how they feel. We'll see what happens. Okay, Saturday, we'll do keys to the game. Cowboys only have one way to win. That's 30-plus carries, which they haven't done all year. I'm beginning to be convinced, Larry, that the Cowboys coaching staff they don't even think they can run the ball. That's the only reason why. I mean, they haven't been in many games where they had the opportunity to run the ball because they've been behind. But in this last game, you were successful running the ball in the first half. I don't know why in the second half they didn't come out and run the ball. They came out and went 3 and out on 3 straight pass plays, punted the ball, and then next thing you know, you're down by what was it? 12 points? 10 points. They're down by 10 points. I just don't. I don't get it. The only thing that I can think of is that they just don't think that this team can run the ball. But if you go back to Green Bay days with Mike McCarthy, they didn't run the ball much then either. They threw the ball. This is kind of Mike McCarthy's MO. He likes to throw the ball. But against high-powered offenses like this, you're going to have to establish some type of running game to keep them on the sideline. It's going to have to be a successful running game. It can't be 2 yards a carry. It can't be. Dalvin Cook is that good at running the ball off tackle, then give him the ball off tackle and let him do what he's good at. Don't just keep running 22 dives straight up the middle with him. Give him an opportunity to do what he does. Their best player on defense right now is their middle linebacker. Stay away from his ass. That would be smart. Just saying. I don't know. We'll see if they figure it out. It's going to click. It's going to click one day. It has to. It has to, or it's going to be a whole lot of people looking for jobs in the offseason. It's got to click. Organization, especially an organization with the name like the Dallas Cowboys, you can be bad for a little while, but you got to turn this thing around. We're getting restless. Got to put teams together to win. This team wasn't put together that great, but I just feel like they could be more successful than this. This is not very successful, and there's a definite disconnect somewhere in the clubhouse, and the head coach and the quarterback are gonna have to put this thing back on track. And if not, you know what I mean? Like, hey, get a good draft pick. Don't waste it. You know what I'm saying? Don't waste it, and just do the same thing last year. You're gonna have to make some moves to make this team better. They have a talent issue. They do. They have a big talent issue, and it's pretty obvious now. It's not a secret. All right, Saturday, keys to victory. Talk about this offense and defensive matchups. What'll be good and what should work, or what we can do to stop this high-powered offense that the Atlanta Falcons have. We'll have a guest on here. We'll have Zoe on here. And Zoe will talk to us about the Falcons and give us, some inside information about the Falcons. And then we'll come up with a prediction. And, hopefully these Cowboys can pull this one off. But this is going to be a tough task. It's going to be very tough. Okay. Thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate it. We'll be back on here Saturday and then right after the game on Sunday. We're definitely going to do that after the game on Sunday. That's a lot of fun, man. All right. I'll see you guys soon. Cowboy C3, I'm out. Peace.